Hello everyone, this video will cover Module 8. Module 8 is the halfway point for the semester, which means that you will be completing a midterm reflection at this point. We are also moving on to our second genre of writing, which is poetry. And so you'll notice that all of the modules for poetry are now open. And so you can go through them in any order that you want, as long as you complete all of the assignments by the end of the poetry unit, which is April 9th. So make sure that you are going through the assignments. I recommend going through them in the assignments that they are listed, in the order that they are listed in the modules. But again, just like the short stories, if one of them inspires you more than others, then you can definitely start there, and then just make sure that you do those self-assessment quizzes when you are done. So I'm going to go over where I want you to start, which is Module 8. Module 8 is our introduction to poetry and just gives you a little bit of background for those of you who've never written a poem before, and gives you some start to looking at the techniques that you'll need, as well as the chapter that will be covering what we're looking at. So you can see that our Module 8 looks similar to the first module that we did for the short story unit. And this video is going to focus specifically on this module, and then I will do a separate video for each of the subsequent modules explaining that specific poem. So obviously you have the chapter that you're going to read, which is the chapter over writing poetry. There is a lot of terminology in this chapter, so I really recommend going through it, maybe taking some notes or noting where some specific things are, so that you can go back when you need to sit down and actually write a poem and be able to go through that chapter and kind of find exactly what you're looking for when you need to look something up. I also have a couple videos in here. Writing poetry is challenging just because there are a lot of ways to write a really bad poem. There are a lot of ways to write a really good poem, and sometimes whether it's good or bad depends on who's reading it. And so it can be a challenge for students to really recognize how to approach a poetry assignment just in general. Many students, the only kinds of poems they've ever encountered or written themselves are rhyming poems, and the majority of the best poems out there don't rhyme. They're not lyrical like that. And so there's a lot out there. There's a lot to poetry that students often have not been exposed to yet. So I've got a couple videos in here just to kind of get you started thinking about poetry in a different way. And so I highly recommend watching them, particularly this interview with Billy Collins as one of our former U.S. Poet Laureates. He's a great resource for some really good poetry advice. And then obviously you're going to take the quiz over the chapter, just like you've done before, and that will be the quiz for this module. You will not have a separate self-assessment quiz because you are doing the midterm reflection. So this is the poetry collection, and you're writing 4 poems just like you wrote 4 short stories. Each of these poems is a specific type of poem, except for the last one, which is your choice, and so that one is a little bit more open. You have 3 due dates. That'll be the first poem, and then the next 2 poems are together just because of the number of modules we have this semester, and then the last one will be due in the last poetry module, which is also the one that we'll do the feedback for. So just kind of keep in mind, I have them in this order because I feel like this is the easiest way for students to complete them, but you may decide that you want to start with the fixed form poem, and that's fine. So however you want to go through them is fine. And then this is the assignment that I want you to work on in this module. So before you really start working on those poems, I want you to complete this poetry elements assignment. It is similar to the short story elements assignment in that it's just to practice specific techniques and give you a place to start with poetry. And so I like to start with poetry by doing this poetry magnets thing. And this poetry magnets is a website that you go to, and you just get yourself, you go in here and you have it give you some words, and then you create a poem using the words that it's given you. And then the poem can be kind of silly, honestly. You can just put them really in any order, but whatever order you feel like makes something poetry looking. And so some of them get a little bit fun, a little bit weird. And so students really like um, this website, but they also like this assignment because you can get kind of a silly looking poem when you're done. Doesn't matter if it makes any sense or not. You're just going to, unfortunately, you can't save it. So you just take whatever you come up with and type it into a Word document. You could also, if you wanted to, you could screenshot it and then put the picture of it into your Word document for your elements assignment. That's fine too. The other two poetry element poems that you're writing is you're going to do a mimicry of William Carlos Williams' poem called This Is Just to Say, and it's apologizing for something, but he ends the poem with sort of a tongue-in-cheek, this is why I did it sort of thing. And so the original poem is here that you can look at, and you can see how short, it's not a terribly long poem, but it's an apology. I ate the plums that you were saving for breakfast. But forgive me, but they were so sweet and so delicious. So what I want you to do is write a really short apology where you're apologizing for doing something and then justifying it in the end. So, and you can follow his format there. And then the last one that you're doing is a line length practice, and basically you write one poem, and the first time, so you write the poem, and then you're going to put it into the document in two different ways. The first way is we're going to have a whole bunch of really short lines, so like 1 or 2 words. So you're basically going to break it, chop it up. It'll be really long and skinny. And then the second version of the poem, same exact wording. You don't have to rewrite it in any way. You're going to have really long, just a couple of really long lines. And what happens is, this is just to see what happens to the poem. When you have really short, choppy lines, we read it differently from really long lines. And so this is just to start getting you to see how and why those breaks in the lines are so important when we're reading a poem. So you're going to do those 3, and those are, again, just practice. And then the other thing that you're doing in this module is your midterm reflection. So since we're at the midpoint of the semester, you're going to reflect on the semester and talk a little bit about what you've done so far and whether or not you're meeting your goals and that kind of thing. So I'm asking you to answer these questions. You can answer them. You can just make a numbered list and answer each question, or sometimes students prefer to answer sort of an essay form so that they can get more developed in their answers. The main thing that I want you to be thinking about is not only your own self-assessment of your own work, how are you doing, but also thinking about the class itself. Are you getting what you wanted from this class? Are there any changes that you can make, or even that I could make to help make the class a little bit easier for you or a little bit better experience for you, particularly with the ungrading process? How are you doing with that? Does it feel right? Or is it hindering your classwork in some way? Is there anything that I can do to help you out with understanding any of the assignments and that kind of thing? So this is the midpoint semester reflection, and obviously that will give you an opportunity to kind of see what you've done so far. And then, of course, don't forget about the journal, the creative writing journal. Make sure that you are working on those entries. You do need 8 for the semester. You should be working on them throughout the semester. Don't leave them all until the end, because then you'll be miserable at the end. So make sure that you are working on them continuously. So that is Module 8. That is the start of our discussion of poetry, and it also is the midterm midpoint. If you are struggling with anything, if you need help with anything, please reach out through email or through Canvas, and kind of keep track of some of the things that I've been grading, some of the things I've been giving you feedback on. Make sure that you are looking in your grades. Those self-assessment quizzes, remember, I will be changing grades on them if your self-assessment is not accurate. So if you said you did something but you didn't actually do it, or you didn't actually turn it in, I will be changing your grade on that. And so if you're in a situation where you did something but you just forgot to submit it, then we need to get that submitted so that your self-assessment is accurate.